Come looking for some fabulous F05 fun. Ladies and gentlemen, you've come to the right place. Hello everyone, and welcome to what is going to be another enthralling evening of racing at the Brazilian Grand Prix. One of probably the most iconic tracks out there among the current F1 roster. Full, teamed with history no less, and today even more history could be made in the F05 variety. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not a commentary box tonight. The heat of competition has made this a hype cauldron, because alongside me in the commentary box, it is none other than Mr. Jake Sperry. How are you doing, Jake?
I'm doing good, and I'm really looking forward to F05 action. This is an Interlagos circuit that, in my opinion, should never have been taken away from the final round of the Formula One World Championship. It is a true battle bowl that we're going to find ourselves with today. A circuit where each and every corner is an overtaking opportunity, which you can't say very often in modern Formula One. And I think these drivers here in Division 2, they realise that the 5 drivers chasing down at the top of the standings, they all know they have to perform today because they're all already one race behind.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with you. Constructors-wise, it gets very, very tasty, by the way, because there's only 10 points separating first through to third. And even then, you've got Sauber and Mercedes joint fourth on 115 points. There's still so many scores to settle as we enter the closing stanzas. And the margins could hardly be closer, Jake. It's absolutely crazy stuff.
It really is. And when you're looking down 2nd through 6th in the championship, you're starting to get a real sense now of who wants to try and put themselves up at the highest level possible. Because you've got APOX KOEN, who's out there on 116 points, but F1 Scott jumped 2 places last time out, moved himself up in the McLaren to 2nd position. You got Sniper C there in 3rd. You got then Petronas 4th. You got Marvsky in 5th and Much in 6th. And they're all split 2nd through 6th by just 18 points. So there's definitely a lot of room for movement, but I'm really interested in that constructors' standings because it's not Ferrari that's running away right now. It's McLaren who have now jumped up to the top, and you got 5 teams split by just what is going to be, let's do some maths on top of the fly, about 25 points.
Oh yeah, it's going to be some bonkers battling in Brazil, ladies and gentlemen. But the Ferrari thing, I think it highlights something really important when it comes to this league racing space. It's that consistency. You have to have both drivers on top of it, turning up, putting in the shifts every single week, even if it is just for those lower echelons of points. they will add up over time. And that's why you've got those 3 teams at the top just separated by 10 points, because they have all shown up. They have all put the hard work in. Only one driver can only do so much in this game. But even so, that one driver in the form of APOX KOEN, what a performance he's had. To say phenomenal is an understatement. He has been absolutely electric this season.
And that's what you have to be every time you go out there and race, because each and every driver wants to be the yardstick out there. They want to be the driver that makes everybody else go, I want to beat that guy. And he is the guy at the moment with the way that he's driving, the way that he's able to command a race. And you're going to start looking around and saying, well, what happens when he's not the guy? What happens when someone else comes up to that level and decides to challenge? It's very easy to dictate tempo from the front, and he'll be looking at this thinking, well, I've still got a race leads margin in the back pocket. I have license here today. So maybe try something a little bit different. If it doesn't go my way, it's not the end of the world today, because I've still got the margin to work with.
Well, I mean, a word on the challengers from behind. It's getting closely contested. And it will be close quarters combat between KOEN and possibly even F1 Scott. I mean, a word on F1 Scott. First league race win on F1 24. I mean, you feel like it's been a long time coming, but he drove immaculately in the USA. He'll be looking to hope to continue that form, especially if he can really close that championship gap.
Look, winning breeds confidence. We all know it. We all understand it. And if you only just got your first win on F1 24 and you're here in what is the start of 2025, then you know something's gone wrong through the first half of trying to get yourself understanding this level of sim racing. And so to get back onto that level, to finally find that victory, sometimes form is about getting hot at the right moments, and nearing an end of a season is the right time to start striking the iron hot, to start saying that I'm going to be the one who's going to start putting the pace up and challenging and making the points haul, because it's at the moment a championship of, well, if you miss, I'm going to hit, and I'm going to try and bring that margin down. And around a track like this one, where you can look around on the Reto Aposta down to Desquita de Largo, you've got the run to the center S as the opening corner on the track, you've got that wonderful midfield section, and then the run out of Junsao. There's always a place you can make a pass here, and this is going to be a tactical race where I think a lot of drivers are going to look around and go, well, if you miss on any one overtake, we strike, and it could be a case of finding the freight train, losing 2, 3, 4 positions if you're not too careful.
New year, new Scott, savouring the sweet feeling of victory, ladies and gentlemen, in 2025. But there has been a big conversation as well. Like you say, the battling is going to be one thing. You have to be careful of track limits. They always do. It's what ultimately caught out KOEN and Speedkey from actually prizing the win away from Scott, or having a chance of doing so last week out. But there is weather in that equation as well, as alarm bells are already ringing, because there is going to be rain today. It aligns with whatever the real-life weather is, basically, in the country at the time. Brazil is experiencing a bit of rain at the moment, so the elements are coming out to play. And that's just another thing they have to adapt to. It's what they're so good at as well, being able to quickly adjust to any conditions. But they're going to have to put themselves at the mental forefront, knowing that qualifying further up the field, staying out of trouble, particularly with the wet conditions, it's going to go a long way tonight, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think actually putting the weather to real-world conditions puts a lot of emphasis on different circuits around the world. You look at sort of the Northern Hemisphere running in a winter season, you're more likely to find rain than you are going to find sunshine. Here in Interlagos, here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, you're not necessarily expecting rain, but this is a section that you look at, and it's often that you found from about October over towards March, it's sort of a monsoony style season in and around. So you can get that rain. It can build and bubble up, and especially around a cauldron like this, you never truly know where it's going to strike, but often here at Interlagos, when it does, it becomes treacherous, because this is one of the more hillier circuits that you find over the course of the season. There's very much a case of, there's a reason why tributaries run down from turn 15 and 14 down the hill towards Junsao. It's an area of circuit which you look at and go, each and every section of this track is difficult. They've done a lot of work over the years, but still, the rivers run when it rains in Sao Paulo.
Absolutely. It's a circuit with such character, is Interlagos. The undulations, ultimately the roller coaster ride we're going to experience tonight. There is almost no track like it here at the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache. such as the driver it was named after. We're just waiting for everyone to flock in. There's 17 drivers raring and ready to go for firstly qualifying. And I mean qualifying. It's so important to start the weekend on the right track, because qualifying, even your first lap, can spell out how your weekend is going to look. If you just push the limits too much, keep on validating, it can just play on your head. The physical game, arguably, the psychological game is even more important. Just creating that momentum, hopefully in a marvellous fashion, because it's so much easier to let it plummet than to let it be positive.
Look, this is a lap around here that's about 70 seconds, and you can keep whittling away for how quick it goes. This lap goes incredibly quickly. So if you do make mistakes on your first run, on your second run, you've got more time than you would do, say, at Spa or at Abu Dhabi or Miami, for example, to go and gather that time back up again and get another run. You've got a lot of chances in qualifying to get the time you want. So it is important to get a banker, but I wouldn't say it's as important as some other circuits this season. It is still important. You've got a lap which is very much demanding with high downforce. It's very easy to have one small wiggle, and then if you have an issue through the middle of the corner, it's exacerbated here on a circuit of high downforce rather than it is on low. So what we're going to be walking into here today is the simple question: who's going to put a good banker time down? And then when it comes to qualifying, who can fine-tune their qualifying lap? Because that's going to be the importance. Getting a good lap time happens, but then when you fine-tune and fettle and get every single inch of lap out of the circuit, that's when we're going to see where the good drivers come to play.
Talking of confidence as well, alongside that, the interview we had with Koen after the USA Grand Prix, where he did finish P2 in the end, he came into this weekend saying that Brazil isn't one of his most favourite tracks, and it's not necessarily the way you want to approach a weekend, but ultimately, there is a reason he's up there. Even on tracks where he doesn't feel as comfortable or as acclimatized, he's still up there. He's still right at the forefront and the thick of it. And that's why he's up there. Like you say, consistency is going to be key out there tonight.
Well, form is temporary and class is permanent, and it doesn't matter how comfortable or uncomfortable you are at a track. There is something of an innate level of pace that you build into yourself through months and years of practice and toil and hard work, and I think that's what we're starting to see. We're seeing here from APOX KOEN that, you've got to put the hard yards in to get the most out of these circuits. And if he doesn't like this circuit as much as other circuits, by the way that his driving style handles, or the fact that it's higher downforce, or the fact that it's an anti-clockwise circuit, for example, then that's up to driver preference. Some drivers like circuits better than other circuits and perform better at some circuits than other circuits. I think Interlagos is one of those tracks where, especially during the race, it's an equalizer. Anyone has an opportunity to make their way through. And we've seen each and every time that the real world comes here, the best drivers seem to always find the best results around this track. This is a true driver's circuit, and it takes the truest amount of pace to go and master it.
You hear the beeps in the background, ladies and gentlemen. That can only mean one thing. It's time for round number 8 of the F05 ESPORTS Championship. Welcome along to the Brazilian Grand Prix. What a time it is going to be. Qualifying just around the corner. And
get in there, Lewis.
First things first.
Miracles do happen,
like
mate.
You say, it's all about that first lap. Who can put themselves on the front foot straight away? We have 18 drivers raring and ready to go. Thank you so much for the follow, whoever that was. I do appreciate it. Shout-outs to everyone who has already joined this round of the F05 ESPORTS League. It's time for some fabulous fire and brimstone, where cloud cover is well overhead. Will that spell danger for a lot of drivers? That remains to be seen. But first out onto the track to test out the conditions, it's one of the McLarens. We're trying to gauge exactly who it is, and the answer is, Jake, when sense eventually prevails, it will be the McLaren of... It must be Matty Peel, because Scott Taylor is just coming out of the garage. So everyone getting out there nice and early, get lots of laps on the board, start to really pile up the confidence as we go on.
Well, they'll have a good idea of what the session's going to do weather-wise, so the understanding of if you're out there or not, I think, is going to be really important to know. And clipping the wall there on the exit of the pits there for Scott Taylor is not going to be doing much good of any good. out there to try and really maximize the times. Now, because of this inclement weather that we got here just hanging over the circuit, I'm sure these drivers are out there are not wanting to save tyres, at least on their first qualifying attempt. I think they're going to want to go out there, put their best times on the board early, and we'll see it here with Matty Peel first, who rounds through Junsao, the junction corner, and runs up the hill now through Sabina dos Boxes, and then into the Arquibancadas corner, which is the final corner out on the lap to gear things up here at Interlagos. And the important thing is knowing that you crest the rise and find this braking zone at turn 1 at the plateau, and such a late turn in.
Clipping the curbs to absolute perfection there. Maybe a bit of time on the table, but it's a good thing he's got out there early, because it looks like rain already in the air. So it's paramount that they get the laps done as early as possible. Purple Sector 1, courtesy of the fact he's the only one that's done one. Hug the inside, blast the ERS into oblivion, and then it's up towards the double right-hander. Barely brake and let the engine braking do all the work. Hope the aerodynamics hunker the car down to the ground, and then it's this left-hander. Least line of resistance, narrow that distance as much as possible. There's time is not on the side of any of these drivers. Ignore the Rolex sponsorships for 1 second here, because everyone's got to watch themselves on a snap of oversteer already as the track conditions deteriorate at an insanely rapid rate of knots. Through Sector 2 and through Junsao towards the line. It's a full foot-to-the-floor situation for Matty Peel, who has to pull the trigger on DRS. Maximum flappage towards the line. Hug the inside wall. The banker is a 1 minute 10.2, but those times will come down so thick and fast as Petronas takes top spot for now with a 1:10.0, but you can certainly bet, Jake, those times are going to continue to tumble as into the 1 minute 9s goes Duke Seeker in the other Sauber.
Look, this is really important, because if you're out there first, you've got the best track conditions out there. If you look behind at the drivers, there's some out there like Speed Kai, for example, who's only just going on to an outlap, and you're really seeing the difference. Scott Taylor on an 11.4 wasn't able to get anything that he really wanted out of there. APOX KOEN on a 1:10.2 down in 7th place, and this track's only going to get worse, and they're going to have to hope that the rain stops and is only there for about 5 minutes or so. You can see Nick flies over the line on a 1:12 flat. This track is now suboptimal for running the fastest times out there. George Hutch already retires it from the session because Hugo goes and puts a 12.6 down. If you missed the boat, quite simply put, you were hoping you were on Noah's Ark, because I think that the Kick Saubers have got that absolutely spot on here in qualifying, and if this track continues to stay wet, I think they've got the result they want. DRS disabled.
The absolute worst news possible for Speed Key, who left it late, much too late at that. You'd have more grip on a kayak than a Haas car currently, hugging the inside line as much as possible, but resistance is futile. It's just time being shipped 10th after 10th. It's an elegant slide, I will give him that, but elegance will not breed electric pace. As line of least resistance towards the line, no DRS to be deployed for the Haas driver. Can he prize himself away from last position? The answer is no, he cannot. A 1 minute 15.9. And, well, quite understandably, drivers already retiring in the pit lane as the track conditions will continue to get worse and worse. So, for the Saubers, it looks like, quite unbelievably, it's going to be... Don't scratch your eyes, people. It really is happening. Kick Sauber are 1 and 2 here in qualifying, and it looks absolutely set in stone. Completely concrete. Sniper Z and the Mercedes in 3rd. Mr. Dale in 4th for Alpine. Nando Forlon's, well, almost living up to his namesake. He is in 5th, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, those that struck the iron while it was hot and before it could be extinguished by the droplets of rain, it has paid dividends so handsomely.
Well, you look at the drivers who may be looking at their championships and going, we're in exactly the wrong position that we need to be. I look at Much down in 14th position, who just got out late and was unable to really do anything about it. APOX KOEN in 7th and Scott Taylor in 10th will both turn around at each other and go, well, we're middle of the pack, we've got work to do. But the two drivers who I think have done the best championship-wise are both Petronas and Sniper Z. I think those two are going to be the ones who want to try and make something happen in the race early, but with 11, nearly 12 minutes here in qualifying, I think only a handful of drivers come in. I do believe that one of the Kick Saubers has just gone back out again, and I believe this will be on a set of intermediate tyres just to get a little look at the conditions. This will be SLR Petronas, so he will burn a little bit of rubber in on the intermediate tyres, but the good news here is he's getting a feel for these track conditions should this translate to the race.
It's important as well, like you say, acclimatising to the wet conditions, if indeed it does, well, regardless of whether it starts or ends off in wet conditions, getting out there, getting used to the amount of grip you have, the amount of traction in the rear tyres, the amount of purchase the Pirelli tyres will have, it all will add up. This man in P2 currently put on a worldie, but getting on the grass for a little half pirouette. It's not going to be the full 10 out of 10 from the Strictly Come Dancing scene, but it is a decent effort nonetheless. Carries on their merry way. Luckily, it's not the race. You can carry on. There's also a Ferrari going out there, testing out the conditions. Bantam's going out there. Last week's pole sitter, currently down in P9, has just stated in the Twitch chat, apparently it could be getting drier as this session goes on. So perhaps a last-minute furious flurry of lap times should the track dry out and conditions really ramp up towards the end. But, I mean, based on evidence at the moment, with the amount of standing water and the sheen on the track, you'd think that rather unlikely.
Well, this is where it gets interesting, because if drivers really do believe that this track is going to get drier as the session goes out, there's every incentive to run right now on a set of intermediate tyres. You've got Santi Ortiz out there on a set of soft tyres, which is not the right tyres to be on. You've got to be on a set of tyres that clears the standing water out there on circuit. Give yourself as much of a chance of getting a dry line as possible on the track, but when the track does form into what it needs to, which is a dry track with a dry line, gives you the opportunity to say, we can go out there and put a lap time down. If they all believe it, they should all be out there on intermediate or wet tyres trying to clear that track, because they'll know that the rain would stop in about 4 or 5 minutes time and they'd get that opportunity to see the lap times improve. I don't see that happening at the moment, and as such, I think this is a really important one. And look at that. Look how difficult it is on a set of dry tyres there. Santi going around. It's very much an ice rink for him as he rejoins the track.
He's also got front wing damage as the American Dream, so perhaps it's more of a nightmare that he's experiencing, which is rather unfortunate. But it's really a lesson of learning. Don't go on soft tyres in the wet conditions. Petronas is on a lap, meanwhile. It's just completed a 1 minute 18.6. So, I mean, it'd be futile to try a lap on intermediates anyway, unless Speedkey can find a lap time quicker than 1 minute 15.9. If so, Ayrton Senna could well have been reincarnated in the form of the Haas driver. That all remains to be seen. Plenty of drivers out there at this stage as we are past the fulcrum point of this qualifying session, all on intermediate tyres or just acclimatising themselves to the intermediate conditions. Not too unlike real life, where it was in fact a wet race all the way through, and in fact at times even more treacherous than that. The red flag came out and it was a masterful drive from Max Verstappen, you have got to say.
It was back then, and one which pretty much gave him everything of a title incentive, and one of those champions drives that you often get to see and you often talk about. And now Duke, who has got himself the pole time, believes it's not going to improve, decides, you know what, I'm going to retire from the session and say, it's not going to get dry enough out there to make this happen, as we focus on Hugo moving through the middle sector there, coming out then of the Pinarino corner, up the hill to Bico de Pato, which is the Duckbills corner, the tightest corner out there on circuit, down the hill through Mahulo, and then over to Junsao, the junction corner, to lead back on to what is the faster section of this track. It is a tale of 3 different sectors out there. Sectors 1 and 3 are very, very similar in terms of what you get, but Sector 2 being very tight, very twisty, it's often a case that you want to run higher downforce when it comes to qualifying, but a little bit lower downforce when it comes to the race, and I think that's going to be important. Drivers who have gone for a lower downforce setup are banking on the fact that they've got 2 great long straights to make overtakes here today, which will be to the Senna S and to the Skid de Lago.
Might be seeing some evidence on the setup front already. We saw Petronas and Hugo both cross the lines on 1 minute 18s. Scott's pushed like absolute mad and has just done a 1 minute 17.1. So either that, well, it's a huge snap of oversteer, so I've nearly just cursed Scott, I do apologise. But equally, it could be, well, it could be one of two things. Either Scott has really had a huge epiphany moment after winning his first league race on F124 last week, or the track conditions are in fact evolving and getting better as this session goes on. All will be revealed. Also, some say a duck might actually be quicker than an F1 car around this track at the moment. Don't quote me on that, though. We are just under 6.5 minutes to go here in qualifying at the Brazilian Grand Prix. There is nothing really to report other than wet weather driving and people just getting used to the intermediate tyres. Tyre management will be crucial, as it seemingly always is, but it all comes down to driving style as well. That's really been the story of F124. There really are two massively different sides of the pendulum. Swung violently to one side, you have the smooth approach, nice, careful, controlled, composed corrections on the steering wheel as you slowly plant on the power. And then you have the other side, and we've seen it in the F1 sim racing not too long ago, where you have that Fernando Alonso-esque steering technique. You snap the wheel in. Because of the amount of grip you have, the car will grip itself, will bite into the apex. And then in theory, you can straighten up the wheel, blast on the power, and away you go. Both of those come with their own advantages and disadvantages. But sometimes it all comes down to personal preference. This man here in the Ferrari loves that Fernando Alonso technique. But ultimately, it is what cost him at the US Grand Prix last week.
Look, you're only so reliant, and you actually can see it right there. Try to get that snap of turn in, the car deciding it doesn't want to play ball, and he just completely understeers off the track. So that's what you're starting to understand about drivers in these conditions. It is absolutely wet. You can see here the wheel tracks being formed now as they run on through. There'll be spray starting to kick up now on this circuit too. No chance for this track to be anything more than just what is a boating lake at this moment in time. So what you're understanding about the two setup styles, it's very much a game of chalk and cheese. You got that very quick, short, sharp turn that you get into some of these corners. That does work in the short term, but long term, you're going to be wearing that tire out more because you're putting more rotation into the steering wheel. You're putting more work on the tires, therefore you're putting more wear onto the tires. That smoother style is going to favor a long-term approach where you can save the tires for a little bit longer. You're babying the tires as you go through, which has been the tried and true method with Formula vehicles for a number of years. And I think when you've got the format that we've got here, I think it does favor a driver who wants to be a little bit more aggressive, because you're not going to see that prolonged tyre wear lap after lap after lap as much as you would do, say, at 100% race distance. So I think that's going to be the telling calling card out there, where drivers who do have that snappier, more aggressive turning style really pay off at 50% race distance, because they don't have to worry about it so much at 100% race distance by comparison.
Track conditions getting terribly treacherous as we're basically 3.5 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Riding on board with Scott as he's wrestling with the rear end of the car, trying to plant the power down. But it's getting almost out of intermediates territory with the amount of standing water, and he too peels into the pit lane as he actually had a massive skid. So hopefully he didn't hit the pit wall and all is well in his world. Looks like it is, as he's just sauntering back to his garage. Cohen and a few others staying out on the track, still gradually, bit by bit, getting used to the conditions, but again, having problems on the brakes. As the tyres begin to cool down more and more, the standing water, more aquaplaning, rearing its ugly head. As we come into the final few moments of this session, under 3 minutes to go, more and more drivers pulling the plug on this qualifying session. Bantam says it's treacherous out there. I agree. Forget ducks, blue whales might be a better option in terms of efficiency around the Brazilian Grand Prix track at the moment. Certainly not a blue whale, but a Scarlet Ferrari trying to dance its way through the left-hander towards Jungsao, the descent down the hill. So careful on the camber and therefore on the power, as the undulations can spit the car out horribly, but planting the power nicely, hugging the inside, and it could well be a retreat to the pit lane for APOX KOEN, and it is not. Stays out across the line on an absolutely waterlogged Interlagos circuit, a 122.8. No idea what that means in the context of everybody else. I would have referenced it against Mr. Dale, but alas, we cannot. Still a few pottering around, and I think we can confidently say congratulations to Kick Sauber, a front row start at Interlagos.
Yeah, it's a wonderful result for them. They'll certainly take that with a pinch of salt and go, that's everything that we want and a little bit more. So I huge props to them in terms of getting the result that they want, but now's the next stage, and that's where we'll see it next.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We can quite confidently say top 3, Duke Seeker takes pole position, the only man who dared to dream to go into the 1-minute 9's realm, and so he did, in emphatic fashion, only a tenth and a bit ahead of his teammate Petronas, who's in a Sauber. That royally confuses me, but a 1-minute 10.0 was just enough to beat Sniper Z in the Mercedes. There's a huge snap from Mr. Dale, and a supreme slide to boot. If there were points for Flair in this championship, Dale would be getting all of them at the moment. As towards the start-finish line, he goes for Alpine once again, staying out on the road, under a minute to go in this qualifying session. 1-minute 20.4, Mr. Dale loving the heavy wet conditions on the intermediate tyres. Bantam saying in the Twitch chat that any traction zone is oversteery. The brakes is the main problem, though. You're having to adjust all the time as the weather gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
But on the intermediate tyres, it simply just can't deal with it. It can't clear the water fast enough, and so you're dealing with two problems in one. The tyres being slightly cold, and them not clearing enough water out of your way, all in the same token as another huge slide for the daring Mr. Dale.
Yeah, definitely having a big slide. Don't you love 5,000 ping, ladies and gentlemen? That was excellent. But at least at this moment in time, Mr. Dale finds himself in a place where I think he'll be very happy. The checkered flag out then in qualifying, knowing that he's just getting those tyres into a window where they can work. And sometimes it would pay off to actually get a lot of running done on these intermediate tyres, because the more that you wear them, the more they're like a slick, and effectively you create an even more in-between tyre that might work if you've got a little bit of wear on those intermediates. But I think he's just putting on a show here for the Brazilian virtual fans who are out there, just trying to drift it round.
Almost done then, checkered flag out. A few drivers stayed in the pit lane, surveyed the conditions, decided they didn't want a piece of that pie. Mr. Dale with a flick and a swish and a 360 across the line, and just manages to keep it out of the wall. Again, if there were points for Flair, he would have them in droves. Just speed key to go in the Haas, and it's Tokyo drifting in Brazil. Slightly the wrong side of the globe for that, but if nothing else, it looks absolutely luscious. Just a few moments before the Haas crosses the line, and me and Jake, as he invalidates his lap to boot, we can take you through the running order, the grid for this race, and perhaps some shocks and perhaps not, given how this qualifying session unfolded. Those that went earlier paid the excellent price of being further up the pecking order. The two Saubers, 1 and 2, Duke Seeker on pole position with Petronas in second, Mr. Sniper Z in P3 with Dale in P4. Nando Forlonzo was so close to getting the same number as his name for his grid position. Couldn't quite do it. He rounds out the top 5. You've then got the McLaren of Matty Peel. Championship leader APOX KOEN will start this race from 7th place on the grid. Santi Ortiz, number 8 in the Haas car. Bantam's in 9th with Scott Taylor, last week's race winner, rounding out the top 10. The rest of the grid is there for all to bear witness to. And if that was qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, we saw how they had trouble adjusting to the conditions and how treacherous it was. Race day is going to be absolutely ecstatic to watch.
It will be, and it'll be very much a case of a blank slate. They haven't really had the ability to set any form of rhythm here in qualifying because of the way that this qualifying session played out. A dry to wet immediate, and look at it, it is tipping it down here, looking like for the race, which these drivers will not be best pleased with here, Karl. And I think we're going to be in for a real treat here of drivers trying to weather their way through what are very tough conditions. It's one thing to qualify yourself at the front, it's another thing to stay there, and with a jumbled up grid that we have here today, it's about the staying power of those at the front and in the middle of the field, and who can make their way through in conditions which are fit pretty much for power boating rather than Formula vehicles.
The rainy weather, the great equalizer, ladies and gentlemen, at one of the most historic venues there is to bear witness to on the Formula 1 calendar. The formation lap is supposedly underway. It is now underway as both Saubers get off the line and they all try and get any morsel of temperature into their tyres. Mercifully much lighter rain than they had to experience at the end of that qualifying session. But like we say, the great equaliser. These are the conditions that can really separate the good drivers from the great drivers. All of that will remain. For now, it's about the green wall as we have a Williams car going insanely wide in the background. That might well be Mr. Nick Flies flying off the track for the time being. Hopefully he can be flying in a completely different way and going even wider towards Argentina at turn number 4. But the Kick Saubers will want to unleash all of the pace they can, build that green wall, because there could be some hefty points on today. They've got the grid position, that's part 1 of the job done. Race day, they've got to make it count.
They really do, and this is where it actually gets important here with the formation lap. You don't want to make contact with someone else and have that formation lap completely go away out there. You know, you've got to be so switched on to how important this is going to be. That tyre temperature is a huge difference maker. It's the difference between, you know, getting the grip for an extra lap or not, getting the temperature in the brakes as well, making sure that the carcasses are happy in terms of the temperature. You've really got to be switched on, and you know that when you're at the front as well, that tyre cools a lot longer than it does for everyone else. There's no incentive for the drivers at the back of this field to go any form of fast, because they know that they can take as long as they like to warm their temperatures up, because the drivers at the front, their tyres will do one thing and one thing only: they will cool.
Red Bull and Williams not waiting around at all. Nick Flies and, well, actually no, Clip by Ollie didn't want to get on with it, but he got disqualified. So his tyres are better fit for an Eskimo, which is a big problem as the rest of the drivers line up on the grid. The Williams of Nick Flies, though, not waiting around for one moment, perhaps deciding that going faster and really pushing the tyres on the formation lap will actually pay dividends and give him more temperature, as APOX KOEN's disqualified for overshooting his grid box. Perhaps not the way to really build the confidence, but 5 red lights at the beautiful Brazilian Grand Prix. Lights out and away we go, and it's a decent start up at the front for the two Saubers. We've got the absolute worst camera angle imaginable, but Petronas has been absolutely mugged off the line. Seeker's now side by side with Dale. They still run side by side through the center S's, and Dale takes the lead. What a scorching start from the Alpine driver. Snipers he up to P2. The green wall immediately burst through in a matter of moments as we see if everyone can make it through. Wide goes Mr. Dale as they're all trying to acclimatise themselves to race conditions, and Duke is out. Duke is already out of the Brazilian Grand Prix before it's even begun, and he's left the session. It could be an absolute calamity of connections, but Dale takes the lead. Scott Taylor's fighting it out with Nick Flies. Cohen's had a fantastic start up to P4. Scott Taylor trying to use the inside line, but the marvellous momentum of the outside line keeps Nick Flies in play for now.
Look, it was panic stations off the start. There was 3-4 wide in 2 different places as they were making the run to the center S. And you're looking around, APOX KOEN with a great start, up 3 places to get things sorted, as now Much, who hasn't really made too much progress, he's only +2, trying to get past Hugo to go up to a 3rd, and does. You're now looking around at what was needed. Petronas did not get the start he wanted. Mr. Dale had the tyres up to temperature, had the confidence off the line, and it is worth reminding everyone that the front 2 rows of the grid have it the most difficult on the start because it's a direct uphill run. The Clip by Ollie with 10 seconds of speeding in the pits, and that'll be him out of the race down to 16 then runners. But at least at the moment, Havoc Gaming there, and Bantams with the heavy defence against Much.
Down the inside from Havoc Gamer at turn number 1. That was almighty racecraft early on at this stage when you're not entirely sure how much grip you'll have when you'll get to the corners in this wet weather phase. As through, well, trying to get through is Santi Ortiz. Does the switchback at the double right-hander. Wreaking havoc is the Haasman on the Aston Martin Ace and holding it round the outside. We saw Nick Flies do it on the previous lap, and sailing round the outside goes Santi Ortiz. What a fantastic move from the American Dream, but out at the front, Mr. Dale's having an absolutely fantastic start, absolutely romping clear in the Alpine car and sliding through Jung Sao to boot, Jake.
Yeah, you got to get that margin. You got to give yourself as much time as possible, and that's the key here for Mr. Dale. He wants to give himself as much of a margin here at the front of the field, not worry about who's there behind. Sniper Z there in second, SLR Patronus there in third, and APOX KOEN in fourth. Now here comes Scott Taylor on the outside of Havoc Gamer, looking to make the move into the first part of the Center S. He'll need all of turn 2 here, but he's difficult because he's over the curb. That inside line, he's still there on the inside there, is Havoc, and he'll have the line and the drive going all the way down here to Desquita de Lago, the lakeside corner. Well, that's pretty much the entire circuit here today. And watch out on the inside, because that's going to be March trying to get through, contact front to rear. It's going to send Scott Taylor into a bit of a slide. He'll drop the place because of it, and it looks like Nick Fly's in trouble.
Much there, with much panic being ensued. I do apologise, my game cut out for a second. As much has gone up to P7, apparently, according to our timing screens. I've no idea what's happened to Nick Flies. He's dropping down the pecking order at a rate of knots. I can only assume he's had an absolutely disastrous disconnect, plummeting down the pecking order, as Scott is definitely not 4.7 seconds behind much. I don't know what to tell you. Go to Specsavers. But Scott trying to find any more sort of grip, and he experienced that kind of problem of trying to make the move on Havoc Gamer it was at the time, who's now down in P11. It's that he tried to make that move, actually hoped he would have been further ahead come the second part of the Center S's, and it cost him not being much further ahead, so he couldn't cut across, had to leave the space. That compromised momentum, and Much had a marvellous piece of momentum and obviously took every single advantage of that. Up at the front, though, it's getting tasty. If your name's Mr. Dale, it's a tremendous time because you're 2 seconds out in front, and confidence is building and building and snowballing. Sniper Z in P2, but he's got Petronas and APOX KOEN, the championship leader, in hot pursuit, looking to try and pile on the pressure. Not too close at the moment, but one small mistake can have massive repercussions in these conditions.
There's only one driver who's going to be happy at the lead that Mr. Dale's got, and that's going to be APOX KOEN, because this is taking points away from Sniper Z, from SLR Patronus, who could be doing with an extra 7 championship points or an extra 3 championship points, depending on where they are. APOX KOEN knows that in 4th position, 12 points would be all right. He's still got that margin, but he's only dropping 6 at the moment to the 18 that Sniper Z would score. Mr. Dale with 25 would be a different story. It would bring Sniper Z into the title picture within 1 race distance. We go on board with Speedkey, who's now looking to try and attack Scott Taylor and Much. These two both looking to try and charge up the order, and Much, of course, up about 7 places in the opening 3 laps worth of this race. Look at the difficulties that Scott Taylor's having over through Desquita dos Boxes, and now this will bring the chance in for Speedkey, but at the moment it's about management here. The battery recovery is going to be so important, and speaking of importance, it looks like there's been a change for third, because APOX KOEN is now through.
He's piled on the pressure. It's been a long time coming. He feels like Petronas not giving it up in a hurry, showing the nose to the inside, but KOEN shuts the door on that avenue mightily with the elbows out, and now will give big chase towards Sniper Z in P2. We can see the rain actually easing off quite a lot here. In fact, there's hardly a droplet of it coming from the sky whatsoever. The track is going to be drying out, and now comes a new challenge, ladies and gentlemen. They have to manage those temperatures for as long as possible, not push the intermediates too hard, and then judge to perfection the exact moment to strap on the dry tyres, get that crucial undercut, and put yourself in a prime position. As Scott Taylor, making some crucial moves potentially, has got past Much. He himself, his momentum compromised so much so that Hugo's trying to make moves as they head in towards Jung Sao. They are practically line astern as they go through the left-hander. This is epic stuff, and I love to see some clever racecraft, seeing drivers feint to the inside, put on the pressure a bit more, use their battery, force the person in front to use their battery. As speaking of pulling the pit lane trigger, Much will be the first one to pull into the pit lane, and could this be for dry tyres? We noticed the rain had, well, evaporated at quite a rate of knots, and so medium tyres going on, pulling the trigger early. Could Much have just pulled a blinder here?
Well, you got to remember as well, because this started as a wet race, they do not have to be on different tyres. And if you're going to put it into the tyres like that, that just gives you an indication of how wet this circuit is. The wettest place on the track is the pit exit because no cars run on it. And as such, when you're going on it on dry tyres, it is the wettest part of the track. Now here's going to be the important factor. How quickly can he get up to speed? And what sort of lap times can he do? Can he keep the heat into those medium tyres? He could go medium if he wanted between now and the end of this race. I would even suggest some drivers go onto a hard compound tyre and try to run it between here and the entire end of the race. Look at him slide. The rear's trying to step out at each and every moment up through Ferradura, the horseshoe corner.
Mr. Dale setting fastest laps. They're coming in like wildfire as Snipersy and Koen come in. But based on the evidence we have so far, Much is struggling to keep up with the ailing AI car of Nick Fly's up ahead. So surely it's still just a bit too early to strap on the dry tyres. But even so many drivers pulling the pit lane trigger. Santi Ortiz, Snipersy, Koen, Scott Taylor, Hugo. Loads and loads of drivers coming in that have sussed out the conditions as into the pit wall almost. Go Snipersy into the pit wall. Go Snipersy. It's an absolute disaster for the Mercedes driver who is sent back out onto the center S's by the game. Everyone else just keeping it out of the wall, but absolute disaster at the starting point of the dry conditions. As Cohen's got loads of damage as well. Cohen's got so much front wing damage, both end plates disappearing, perhaps making contact with the Mercedes as well. It's disaster for the championship leader.
Well, it's happened with one of his main rivals, and when you're going to be so close coming out the pit exit, you've got to give yourself room. And APOX KOEN was a racer. He wanted to be aggressive. He wanted to attack. The two come together in the pit exit, and just like that, drama starts to unfold. Mr. Dale going quicker and quicker still on a 116.8. He won't mind. SLR Petronas will smile from ear to ear at what's gone on as Speaky will now dive into the pit and will believe that it's his time. Havoc Gamer now with the fastest lap next to his name as now Bantams and Olel Spaceboy jumps in. George Hutch as well will go through. I wouldn't be surprised to see APOX KOEN and Snipersy back in again to get a front wing change as well. That will cost them an extra 4 seconds. DRS now enabled. It's perfect. An extra 10 for APOX KOEN, and now it's compound interest on the issues.
It's going from bad to worse for the championship leader. A front wing change and a set of medium tyres strapped onto the Scarlet Ferrari. And everyone else smelling blood in the water. Safety car is out. And if you've just gone onto the dry tyres under normal racing speeds, oh boy, do we have the deepest sympathies for you. My goodness me, Snipersy's had another... He's got no front wing at all. Snipersy's had another moment out on the track. And so a safety car's been brought out on lap number 8. And as we say, if you had already pit for dry tyres, it's going to be the toughest of ordeals to take. Because Mr. Dale and those behind, Petronas, Nando Forlonzo, Havoc Gamer, are all going to peel into the pit lane and are all going to have a free pit stop. They've played it perfectly, albeit with a dose of lady luck on their side. She bites, she plays, she doesn't play nice sometimes, but when she does, oh boy, is it a sweet time to be alive. Mr. Dale onto medium compound tyres and will be able to bring them into the window as he pleases.
I'd be really curious to see at the end of this race what happened there with Snipersy to cause that safety car, because you don't often get to see them. And if he's decided to stay out and not go into the pits and go and do that, I wonder whether he's deliberately gone and caused a safety car there to try and salvage anything from his race. Very dangerous to do because you could lose your race entirely. But I would say that's the only way he was going to try and get back in, was if a safety car came out, and when he's got nothing of a front wing, that would be the only way to try and do it. So field neutralized. Shame for Mr. Dale. He had a massive lead out there at the front, but it does promote Nando Forlonzo. It promotes Havoc Gamer. Santi Ortiz and Speaky will be very happy about that. Championship in complete flux at the moment because Petronas now pulls himself within half a second, realizing that APOX KOEN has got 10 seconds and is down at the back in P16. You know, 0 points for the championship leader. Mr. Dale there, and Petronas taking 18. He'd taken a handbasket all day long. This is a big moment in the championship, and this is where big drives are needed. And is that Koen going onto a set of soft tyres? Does it look like as he goes out? Yes, it does.
He might as well. He's got nothing to lose. Has wiped the 10-second penalty clear of his resume. Has got a clean slate to work off of, and crucially, the safety car has spared any blushes in an already red Ferrari situation. The championship leader, who has reigned colossal so much of this season, has it all to do from 15th place. When we get back under racing conditions, Hugo's also managed to wipe himself of his 10-second penalty. Thank you for the follow, whoever that was. I do very much appreciate it. Shout out to the F05 ESPORTS League, and shout out to Tuatara Sim Racing Wear, the #1 place for all of your sim racing wear needs. But up at the front, Mr. Dale still has the lead of this race, and they say Dale dominance might bore fans because that wet stint was absolutely wonderful. He was simply unplayable in those conditions.
Yeah, but he doesn't have them anymore, and I think that's the really important part of it. He doesn't have what gave him that advantage, and now on the dry, this is where I think we're going to get a truer sense of pace, because all of these drivers know that they'll practice dry conditions more than any other condition because it's the one you go the fastest in. Everybody wants to go as fast as possible. The way you do that is you do that in the dry. There's not as much practice when it comes to the wet. So we'll see what SLR Petronas can do. We'll see what drivers looking to make progress through the field will need. And actually, it's worth noting that the Constructors' Championship takes a massive turn. Kick Sauber in the best place possible for their constructors. They'll be smiling about what they've got. Outside of that, in terms of the main challengers for it, it's Ferrari who are doing the best then with Bantams, and they'll have themselves 6 championship points. And to think second best team only has 6 championship points for constructors, that tells you all you need to know. And it looks like we're going to get at least another lap here behind the safety car as things stand, which will mean that they'll go back to racing, you would feel, on lap 12 here of 36. It will give them 24 laps, which I would say is right in the window here for those who are on a hard tyre, like Much, for example. I think Much has an opportunity to go and not stop between now and the end of this race. Nick Flies as well would be another one to keep in mind to go through. But as we know, Nick Flies is still ghosting around, and APOX KOEN is coming in again with Hugo, trying to get as many stops under the belt as possible before going back to running.
Getting the freshest tyres possible. It's a proven strategy. Perhaps it could be risky, especially if there's some kind of scuffle going on at the back of the field. But another new set of soft tyres. He's going through soft tyres like nobody's business, as is Hugo. But back onto the track they go. And as you can see, the pit exit, absolutely bone dry now. They can push it to the absolute limit as they charge out onto the Interlagos circuit once again. And will comfortably saunter up to the back of the pack, as they did before. Meanwhile, there's games being played behind the safety car. Nick Flies, who isn't even in this race, it's his ghost doing all the dirty work, and Much having a bit of a scuffle. No idea who's sorting out where, but Much is debating. He says, I had that 12th place before. Nick Flies says, think again, mate. That's mine for the taking. APOX KOEN and Hugo already up to the back of the safety car train. Meanwhile, in the chat, the Mr. Dale fan club is out in its droves. Apex Joe, it's Chocolate, all cheering for Mr. Dale, who is currently in P1 in this race, but still a long, long way to go. The top 4 have significantly fresher tyres than particularly Santi Ortiz, who is at the front, who was one of the first to pit onto the dry tyres. A safety car, the notification has come up. It will be in at the end of this lap as the sun comes out and shines over Interlagos. Perhaps some positive omens for a lot of the grid.
Well, this is where you need a good restart, and you've got to be so switched on to when Mr. Dale goes. He'll wait for the pace car to dive into the pits. It has. So SLR Petronas here has got to pull up alongside and find the right time to go. And he very nearly thought about it. How late is Mr. Dale leaving this? It could leave him vulnerable, but he does get the launch. And SLR Petronas, not much that he could do to really warrant against it. You've got to be so proactive off of these starts. And immediately the lunge comes in from Havoc Gamer, diving down the inside, puts forcing the Racing Bull up into third position. As we look further back, the likes of Scott Taylor now moving into the points past George Hutch. And APOX KOEN, remember, is on a set of soft tyres, and he will be going like the clappers as quickly as he can, trying to clear what he can. 3 wide down the inside. Thank you, sir.
What a move from APOX KOEN. 2 for 1, 2 for the price of 1. That price is very nice. Ferrari faithful up into P11, his teammate in P7 assessing the situation. There's a change of positions going on between the American team. Round the outside goes Speed Key. Speed by name, speed by nature, slots in front of Santi Ortiz and up into P5. And the Ferrari of Bantams could be looking very interested. Scott Taylor, crucially for him at this stage, ahead of APOX KOEN, but the soft tyres will have so much more grip as feinting to the inside. Goes APOX KOEN to throw Scott slightly off kilter, and then it's going to be simply hunkering into the slipstream and using all of that, punching a hole in the air as the fastest laps come flooding in thick and fast. Down the inside, races APOX KOEN. It's not even a contest. You can see how aggressive he is, letting the car dart into the apex as the front simply complies for the time being with the amount of force being propelled through them. And KOEN is already up into the top 10. What a restart from the championship leader.
Look, he's got good tyres now, but in about 3 laps' time, it's going to start going the other way here, and his tyres are not going to be wanting to work because they grain so much faster than everybody else's, and that is his teammate turned around there in front, so that's going to be trouble for Bantams, who seems to be on the wrong side of Lady Luck each and every time these races go through with F05, and that puts him way down the order and out of the points. But APOX KOEN, he needs to make good times now because he knows that later his tyres are going to go away. He's got to go probably to about lap 24 in this race if he wants to go soft on the strategy to make that work. But remember, he's got to put an entire pit stop in, and all those drives around on the mediums can run at a more, I would say, sufficient pace out there, keep that pace going, and if they want to, they've also got soft tyres available and a lot more to boot, and the contact there as Mr. Dale's lost the race lead to Petronas, and now Havoc Gamer wants seconds.
Yeah, DRS being enabled, we know how strong it is combined with the slipstream at the best of times. And now it's Petronas who's going to have to do some defensive due diligence. Contact! Dale goes round, facing the gravel trap. It's absolute heartbreak for Mr. Dale, who had such a strong opening stanza to this race. But the contact with the side pod of the Sauber has thrown him completely off piste. Petronas the leader, Havoc Gamer P2, Nando 4, Alonso up to P3, Speed Key in 4th and in hot pursuit. Meanwhile behind, KOEN now up to 6th, got past Spaceboy earlier one. It's an interstellar soft tyre interlude from the championship leader, who has got to make hay while the sun is shining on those soft tyres. Next target up the road is Santi Ortiz in the Haas car, but Havoc Gamer looking for a piece of that lead position. With DRS enabled, DRS wide open, maximum flappage, and it's an academic move. But to the inside goes for Nando 4 Alonso, up into P2 as well. Just as quickly as Petronas inherited the lead, he has to do some defensive work from P3. Nando 4 Alonso going to hunker into the slipstream, trying to unleash every single morsel of pace against the kick Sauber driver. Feints the nose to the inside, but Petronas has it covered for now. Slightly wide at the exit though, and that could endear Nando 4 Alonso to the inside line for the double right-hander, and he's going for it down the inside, but sweeping round with some absolutely marvellous momentum. Petronas defends absolutely delightfully, but they can ill afford to fight too much. Once they lose DRS, it could be curtains.
Well, that's what they're worrying against here. If Havoc Gamer gets down the road, it's all drama. Speaking of drama, Santi Ortiz had a spin at the opening corner. That caught him right down to the back of the field now in 14th place. Disastrous for the Haas driver. We've also had Mr. Dale down in the pits to deal with the damage that he's had. So he's now looking to try and get back going again. 3 seconds to Hugo for multiple warnings out there. But here comes Nando Alonso, who's going to go to the outside, use that overspeed. But watch out, because Speaky is not going to let this one go, trying to unlock a position. And he's just not quite there. They've allowed APOX KOEN onto it, but Spaceboy's got 3. Mr. Dale's got 3. There's yellows out in Sector 3. There's a safety car because Dale's retired.
Such a shame for Mr. Dale. I cannot believe it. all seemed to be going his way. The script was set in stars, but not to be. The sun did not shine on Mr. Dale tonight, but what an opening stint it was. Unfortunately, not the fairy tale ending he would have hoped for. Another safety car to potentially spare the blushes of others who have had moments down the grid. Bantam, Santi Ortiz, they can have that mental reset again and go again. Havoc Gamer, your new race leader then, up at the forefront of the field. Again, equalised at the front. Nando Forlonzo, the new big chaser in P2. Speedkey in P3. Petronas to P4. And now it's a question of what everyone will do, particularly those on the soft tyres. Because APOX KOEN, on those softs, they're not going to make it to the end. You can probably guess by now. But does he choose mediums? Does he choose hards?
Well, I'd say mediums from here. I think it's the perfect time. But in comes Havoc Gamer from the race lead. Everyone is going to dive in. And look at this. Oh, he's getting so cheeky. 10 seconds for Petronas for speeding because he was there playing chicken with the line as he was going by. That's massive against APOX KOEN, and such a veteran move by APOX to get him caught out in that fashion. Everybody's in because they realise if a safety car's out, it doesn't matter. Everyone's going to want to be on the same tyres. There's no disadvantage out there. You can choose whatever tyres you want, and almost everybody, another set of mediums.
Scott Taylor and George Hutch going for track position as Cohen's overtaken Petronas in the pit lane. Perhaps Petronas getting slightly out of the way due to the penalty, but that's mighty clever from APOX KOEN. Championship leaders cunning initiative. It's not...
No, that's not on, and here's the reason why. Because we're under a safety car condition here, out there on circuit. When you're there behind the safety car and you're looking to try and rejoin, it is so cheeky of APOX KOEN. He won't get a penalty by the game to go and make that overtake in the pits. And if he's made contact, the stewards will definitely have a big look at that. I think he's playing a really dangerous game with the stewarding team here. And if he's not careful, he is going to pick up some big penalties for the way he's driving.
We shall soon find out. There's two very different sides to this coin. For now, it's championship leaders cunning. Perhaps post-race, it could be something a little bit more ominous than that. For now, he's P6. But Petronas, well, he's alongside APOX KOEN. I don't think he's particularly happy with what's been going on. He's trying to ask the question of, should that actually be my position as he overtook me on the pit exit? KOEN deciding that's not a game he wants to play for the time being. As I was saying, though, Scott Taylor and George Hutch are the only two that have actually stayed out on the older tyres. But look, 7 laps and 9 laps old. That's going to be it's going to be a huge kick in the teeth for the two of them, as everybody else with at least 7 or 8 laps fresher tyres as they go on. Thank you so much for the follow, whoever that is. I really appreciate it. Mr. Dale says, sorry guys, I tried my best, but listen, Mr. Dale, you proved everything you needed to in the opening stint. You did absolutely smashingly, my friend. We go again another time. Don't you worry. Everybody else behind, though, Havoc Gamer and the like, either on mediums or hards, crucially, with an absolutely tremendous tyre advantage.
Well, the tyre advantage is massive. You got Nando on a hard tyre. You got the likes of Spaceboy and Hugo on hard tyres. But for Scott Taylor and George Hutch to stay out there on medium tyres, they're relying on carnage here. They're relying on drives behind, getting caught out in troubles, and having that ability to try and make their way back through the order to score those points. I think that they are relying on a little bit more drama out there. I don't see how they get to the end of the race in any form of position of strength, knowing that their tyres are already probably worn out to about 20% to 25% right now. They are in a really tough position, and they are simply put reliant on a safety car within the next 6 laps or so, and you can never guarantee it, as the field looks like it's completely bunched itself back up together again, and we'll get the notice as they check through the 3rd sector that the safety car will be diving in this lap. Scott Taylor leads this race, but on old tyres with George Hutch as his only saving grace behind, Havoc Gamer is the driver who will be looking to take full effect.
On board with Havoc Gamer, Scott Taylor at the moment will be feeling comfortable at the top of the pecking order, but that barricade will be breached sooner rather than later. When does the McLaren man put the foot to the floor and we get back underway racing? Petronas has cleared his 10-second time penalty. Scott trying to clear the field as we are back underway racing here at Interlagos, and Scott nearly caught out there as George Hutch slapped on the ERS and put the power down, was hunkered into the slipstream, but now gets a 3-second time penalty in almost instantaneous fashion. Havoc Gamer now has the chance to have the ascendancy as he's got an almighty restart. Nando for Alonso's dropped anchor in 4th position and could be well under pressure from those behind. Through turn number 4 they go, and now it's a slipstream fest towards the double right-hander, showing the nose, but you have to be alongside to try and make the moves. It's a question of how creative, how innovative, how improvisatory you want to be. But at the moment, Havoc with no way through. APOX KOEN, though, looking for a way through, as Nando for Alonso has wing damage on the right-hand side. KOEN knew he had to make that move sooner rather than later, and crucially for him, he has. Pursuit on the top 3 begins.
Yeah, but he's got 3 seconds of time penalty there, the same as George Hutch, the same as Nando Alonso after the contact between the pair of them. So that's really going to hurt. And Nando Alonso, you can see the front wing damage is doing all of the damage right now. He's dropping miles back compared to what he wants to be. DRS is now enabled, but the ultimate hurt is going to be as follows. You cannot afford to have any form of front wing damage. You'll lose 1.5 seconds, nearly 2 seconds a lap if you lose the left side end plate out there on these cars. So he's going to be dropping down like a stone. Good news for Snipersy, who's in 9th. Good news for the likes of Petronas, who's there in 13th. And Much, who is up now to 7th position, will also have a smile at it. But George Hutch is doing a wonderful job here of keeping Havoc Gamer under wraps. It's all order at the moment at the front, and chaos has not yet reigned.
It's the widest Mercedes car I've ever seen in all of human history as Havoc darts one way and then the other way. It's a Senna-like stout defence from George Hutch at the moment. DRS enabled on this lap though. And how will Scott Taylor and George Hutch both play this? APOX KOEN now has joined the back of the train almightily quickly. Now, the answer to the query, how will they both play this? Havoc Gamer dumping the battery, using the slipstream. He wants 2 for the price of 1. As out of the slipstream goes George Hutch. Down the inside goes Havoc Gamer to do the double at the center S's. A simply sensational move from the Visa Cash App driver, as up into P1 he goes. And now it's KOEN's turn to try and go on the attack. At the moment, Scott feinting an offensive move to deter the Ferrari man from making any moves inside or outside. Snipersy's had a bit of a problem as he's going wide, and Bantam's getting the switchback. Lovely switchback from the Ferrari driver, and through as well goes Spaceboy on the outside. Big issues for Snipersy at this stage. By the way, safety car at the top left, ignore it. There certainly is not one. Havoc Gamer trying to get away, and it's only going to be assisted because George Hutch had a problem, a massive problem. He's disconnected from the session. It's Heartbreak Hotel for Hutch.
Yeah, and Hutch, who is always going to have to rely on holding himself up at the front of the field now, will realise he's got the same fate as Nick Flies here, and probably will be looking at about 14th position maybe at best. If he's lucky, he might get some points still from the ghost driving that's out there. But here comes APOX KOEN straight to the inside of Scott Taylor with no tyres, no ability to defend. It puts him into second, and now he's got 1 second really to chase down to Havoc Gamer to take what he believes is the race lead out there, and then he's got to build 3 seconds on top of that. On board with Speedkey, who moves over to the outside. Scott Taylor defending at the Skid Lago, but has to yield as he goes down into the corner. It's as easy as you like, and this is where not having a tyre that's fresh is going to hurt. These are going to be long, torturous laps.
Resistance absolutely futile for the McLaren man. It's simply the most horrible sinking feeling that he's having to experience, as Much can take such improvised lines and such creative lines and still be right on the back of the diffuser of the McLaren. Meanwhile, there's a tasty little battle behind, as that is the worst camera angle in all of human history. Hugo, Spaceboy and Bantams all practically sharing the same piece of track and going 3 wide. In the end, Bantams has the ascendancy for the time being and could well continue to have that ascendancy as Hugo has front wing damage on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, KOEN's back in DRS, but Speedkey also up there. Finished in the top 3 in the USA and could have put his, well, one arm right on the trophy had he not got a 3-second time penalty. towards the end of that spectacle. He's looking to do the same here at the Brazilian Grand Prix, and the top three looking to break away, and the DRS train, as much, has moved up into P4.
Well, Much is the driver who really needs it, and you can see that straight through goes Scott Taylor's teammate in Matty Peel. Says, you go on and attack then, because you got Olel Space Boy there behind and Hugo and the next train that's all started to come together, tyre to tyre between Sniper Z and Bantams as they run up through towards this Ferradura here, the double apex right, and through the SA, this tiny little right-hander, down in towards the Pinarino and then back up towards the Bico de Pato once again. So this group a little bit further back is proved to be good, but watching out for Much. Much is the driver that I think Apex KOEN will be looking out for and would love to build 3 seconds on and not let him in. He's the least of the concerns of the championship fighters that he's up against, but Much is someone who desperately wants to pull within range. And speaking of in range, Speaky is on another level because he jumps up and he'll send it down to the inside. Havoc Gamer gives him just enough room on the outside line. He holds, but here comes another boatload of DRS.
Moving with millimetric precision are the two drivers, P1 and 2. A new race leader could be crowned and adorned, but Speaky backs out of that battle for now. He wants to have the big DRS pull on the start-finish straight come the end of this lap. Meanwhile, the battles for P8 behind still continue as Hugo, despite the front wing damage, still fighting on strong and massive contact between himself and Space Boy as they reach for intergalactic levels of racecraft and wizardry. Still on the outside as the Aston Martin driver has to concede battle to the Red Bull for the time being. What a battle this is between 5 cars for 8th place in this race. I was about to also give Scott a round of applause for saying congratulations for staying in the DRS train despite the older tyres. It hasn't lasted. I do apologise, Scott. Applause will have to be saved for later. 5 cars, though, in a DRS train at the front. Speedkey Jake going for that lead once again.
Yeah, you can definitely see the overspeed here, right up there in 8th gear, heading at 320 kilometers an hour plus, hoping to get that run. And you can see there, KOEN dropping down the order and off the road at the opening corner, so he's going to have that mistake. He's now going to lose all of that time that he built. That's 3 seconds that he's dropped, so effectively call it 6 down on what he wants. He's got to do it all over again. How often do you see APOX KOEN make a mistake like that? He's been really thrown out the comfort zone. He's been told to attack all race long, and look at this. He's now making mistakes that he wouldn't otherwise necessarily do.
Perhaps starting to feel the pressure get to him, perhaps starting to feel the tyre, whereas look at him throwing the wheel in every single time, hoping the aerodynamics will comply and that the car hunkers down to each corner. An apex predator is APOX KOEN, it's almost his namesake, but he's catching back up once again to Mr. Scott Taylor in P5, who continues to tumble time after time after time, ailing on those older tyres. Up at the front, Speedkey going for the lead once again, opting to save battery. It is a game of saving the battery, using it to provide the best possible purchase as you go on throughout the lap, using a good amount of curb at turn number 2, and now switching on the overtake button only when you're absolutely certain you can sail past. Do you slap the ERS up to overtake? And simply scything through goes Speedkey with an almighty power slide to boot. The Haas driver moves up to P1 in this race, and now he has the job of trying to control the field behind.
Well, it's a case now of where do you want to be rather than can you break away. I don't think these drivers here at the front necessarily have the ability to break away as much as they would hope. It's about now just keeping yourself in position. Someone like Much here is going to be important to keep in mind because he hasn't really shown his hand against Havoc Gamer, hasn't shown his hand against Speaky, but Speaky pulling out to about 0.6 of a second here coming out of Junsao. This is the difference maker though. Coming up the hill through Arquibancadas to Skidadas boxes and over towards the front section. That's where he's looking to try and build that momentum, and that's where it's paramount. Here comes the look, Much over to the inside. He'll want to be in second position if he can do anything he can for it. A little bit of side pod, front wheel to rear wheel contact, and Much sailing around the outside gets it. Matty Peel trying to go around the outside of the curve at a Sol now has a big issue at the Skid Lago. He'll cross the beams trying to get the move, but DRS is a saving grace for Havoc.
just being temps apart can spell turmoil if you're the one on the receiving end of the overtake. Havoc almost exacerbating that issue tenfold. Koen in the background trying to get any kind of morsel of DRS and slipstream towards the end of this race, but the clock is ticking to just under 10 tours of the Interlagos circuit to go. And what a super spectacle it's been so far. Speedkey, currently the race leader, much in P2. Havoc Gamer in P3. Matty Peel, the last in this lead DRS train, with APOX KOEN, the championship leader, giving chase as much as he can. But without that DRS and slipstream, it's going to be a tall order, even for APOX KOEN. But as you were saying, Jake, the drivers are using this DRS, but they're making those calculations mentally. They're calculating what lap they want to be P2 or P3, what lap they want to have the DRS as much, nibbling the diffuser of Speedkey, just letting him know of his presence, just getting in his head slightly. It's a psychological battle just as much as a physical one, but they are doing those calculations. It's just another element of this league racing series, just asking themselves, okay, what lap am I going to be behind and have the DRS? When will be the best moment for me to be in P2 and go and get the lead and hopefully hold it to the end?
3 seconds for Sniper Z. He's not going to be too pleased about it, as Koen battling it out now with Matty Peel, who's dropped off after a mistake. So there goes the move now and puts him up into 4th position. But remember, 3 seconds is difference in terms of penalty versus not. So Matty Peel still has that 4th place in the back pocket, and you're going to have to continue keeping your eyes on it as this goes on, because Scott Taylor now goes past Santi Ortiz, who's got his 3 seconds. Remember how Santi spun about 10 laps ago and he's back into P7? Goes to show you just how tough the racing has been so far. But at least as it goes up the hill, APOX KOEN now with an almost impossible task, because that gap is skyrocketing out. It's now up to 4.5 seconds, and Matty Peel comes back. They need to battle like anything here at the front, and Much takes the race lead. And so now it's his turn to play defense and be couch commander of the race lead all the way to the wall.
Absolutely millimetric stuff. A massive aggressive squeeze from Much doesn't deter Speedkey one bit. Through they go, and it's another avenue unlocked for the Haas driver back into P1 of this race. The front three have daylight between themselves and Matty Peel, and the battling cars behind. Speaking of which, Koen back down the inside he goes. Contact made. Please keep it on the road, lads. We don't need another situation. Just about keeping their wheels facing the right direction. Matty Peel puts his car ahead of the Ferrari for the time being, and this actually plays nicely for his teammate F1 Scott, Mr. Scott Taylor, despite being on the older tyres, still right behind the championship leader. And yes, it's a tall order to close the gap, but it would still be a gain for the McLaren driver should he get ahead. But significantly older tyres. Again, another tall order on the horizon. Another change for the lead then. Much with DRS. It's an academic move once again. But again, is it a calculation that's just too costly? Should he just wait a little bit more? Is patience a virtue? Because Speedkey is going to come back with another dose of the DRS assistance and go to the inside line and simply retake the lead all over again.
Well, there's a question now on, do you want to sit back? And the answer is, Much has no choice. He is stuck in Schrodinger's overtake. He has to both attack and defend at the same time. The moment he doesn't go for the race lead is the moment that Havoc Gamer decides he wants to throw his hat in the ring and dive down the inside. Matty Peel throws another one down through against Koen. He runs a little bit deep, but I think he's just about going to gather it up through the corner, and he's got the pass done. Brilliant stuff there, as now here comes Santi Ortiz behind, down the inside there for the Haas, and he gets the move done on Scott Taylor. Remember, Scott's looking at 3 seconds here, saying, I've just got to stay within that range, and I get those places, and I smile, and I've got what I want. But at the front, Much has to attack Speedkey, and it's tough. He can only really have one opportunity to sit back and wait, and that's going to be with 2 laps to go, and he takes the road long travelled on the outside this time to get the pass done, and he gets it sorted. But here comes the switch back again.
Much is having a great time in that Alpine car. It's an astonishing Alpine drive, it must be said. But for now, it's going to have to be switcheroos left, right and centre, as again, Speedkey ascends into P1 on the road. Much remains in P2, a little bit off kilter and off composure for a fleeting moment, but gathers it all up, and Havoc Gamer has to slot in for P3 behind. Meanwhile, Mr. Santi Ortiz is getting even better for him. A testament of never give up. He's actually had to concede. I believe it would have been an illegal overtake. That's all I can deduce it down to. But it's a testament of never give up in this league racing series. Never give up in any league race. You might be at the back of the field, but one safety car, one opportunity to put yourself back into the shimmering spotlight, and you never know. Something magical might just come from it. P7 on the road for the time being, but of course with that 3-second penalty still looming over his head. Such is the battling, by the way, for P5 downwards. We've now got, crikey, 8 or 9 cars in the DRS train. That could get very tasty, as the front three are still sorting things out with just a handful of laps to go.
Well, they've got 5 laps here around Interlagos, and they'll know that each and every time the group behind, which is led by Matty Peel now over Scott Taylor, continues to battle behind for 5th, they don't have to worry much now. I think's timed this one to perfection, dives down the inside and gets the place he wants to make that move here. Get it done with perfection. The question will always be that drag race to the line. How late the DRS zone is on that front stretch, and will you have enough time to go and make that pass? I think that's what you've got to size up if you're much. And if you feel like Speaky can't get the run that he wants out of Junsao to unlock that, then you go and make the move at Esquina de Lago on the final lap to make that happen. I think he's in a very good place at the moment, but you're looking around, drivers like Petronas, for example, desperately needs to get through this group to minimize the damage being done by APOX KOEN in 4th place. But you can see here the ghosting in full effect here for Matty Peel as he tries to get away from it. Ortiz finding it there. There's the contact. Round goes Scott Taylor.
All of the hard work is put into insignificance in a heartbeat. Scott Taylor down to P12. After all kinds of kerfuffles and conundrums, the McLaren man has to have this absolute worst sinking feeling. Down to P12 he goes. Petronas, by the way, another example of never give up. Up to P5 is the Kicksauber man, albeit briefly. Through goes Matty Peel, presumably with DRS, but no. Hanging back briefly, but then swinging round the outside with the momentum. Petronas, you know he won't give it up. And shouldering the McLaren man, going through into P5, back into the top 5. Santi Ortiz almost taking an opportunistic overtake down the inside and turning that optimism even further. Diving down the inside, Matty Peel again goes full ghost mode. It's spectral, sumptuous showings here at Interlagos as we on lap 33 of 36, still using their phase beams as Santi Ortiz should get it done on the McLaren man, and so he does. Petronas, like I was saying though, I can catch my breath. Another example of don't give up. Had a 10-second penalty after speeding in the pit lane after the most recent safety car. Now finds himself back behind Mr. APOX KOEN.
Well, he's got to find 3/10 over the last 3 laps of this race. If he can do that, he's got his place as well and will take 4th and will gain on APOX KOEN in the championship. That's what he's hoping for now. Just find a bit of time. He won't catch him on circuit. He's got to look around. They've got to keep that focus, though, here, because Sniper Z is looking to try and get himself involved here. Everybody with the train is in play, but remember those 3 at the top. Speaky currently leading, much in 2nd, and Havoc Gamer in 3rd. What a turnabout it would be in the chat. Oh, and March having a big moment there going into the essay, and he drops back a full bit of time. And look at this, Speaky for the first time, he's got DRS broken.
Absolutely flying. This is exactly what he needs with just a few crucial moments of this race to go. 1.1 seconds the gap. We know how strong the slipstream is. We know how devilishly good the DRS is. But should Speedkey keep Havoc Gamer at arm's length, that's all he needs to do to take the win in the Haas car today. Was so close yet so far at the US Grand Prix. At the Brazilian Grand Prix though, it could be a beautiful climax to proceedings for the Haas driver, who continues to just eke out 100th after 100th, 10th after 10th, much with DRS. will scythe his way through. I have no doubt once again, yes, down the inside as we're on the penultimate lap of the race. Koen in the background there. Could be a question of what could have been had it not been for that mistake, and dropping back and fighting furiously in the mid-pack for a tiny bit. But much gets past Havoc Gamer, but it's 1.5 seconds almost he has to make up on the race leader, and it could be just too little too late. Through the middle sector they go. Scott Taylor takes a consolation fastest lap on the soft tyres, down in P13. Speaky, though, teetering on the edge of DRS. It's nail-biting stuff, but as long as he gets Jung Sao right, he'll be out of DRS range, and then that could be signed, sealed, delivered, with just one tour of the circuit to go.
Well, this has been what Speedkey's done. He's just put himself in the right place. He hasn't been overly aggressive in the way that he's been driving out there. He's known the distance and the width of his car. He hasn't gone over the top of it, and much behind is looking behind, because Havoc Gamer dives back down the inside and takes that second place. And these are 3 championship points which absolutely need to be won by much in this scenario. Running down towards the Skid Lago here on the final lap of this race. He's not close enough to make it happen, and now he's going to have to be a bit creative if he wants it. Speedkey now, knock on wood, 2 seconds to the good. It will be only a mistake that will cost him this victory, and my word, has he deserved it by the way he's driven tonight.
Couldn't agree more. I completely concur, Jake, as through the middle sector they go, much in hot pursuit, and will no doubt have DRS assistance all the way to the line. It was extremely intelligent from the Alpine driver, lifted off a truck ton in towards the first corner, allowed Havoc Gamer through, gave himself the opportunity to retaliate with DRS at the end of this lap, but up at the front, he came close at the US Grand Prix, but where one door closes, another door opens. Speedkey's barged through it, speed by name, speed by nature, wins the Brazilian Grand Prix. It wasn't enough for much, with the DRS at the end, has to settle for P3. Havoc Gamer does hold on. Koen, oh my goodness me, holds on to P4 by 3 thousandths of a second. Petronas gave it absolutely everything. It just wasn't enough. Ferrari 4 and 6, Sniper Z in 7th, Matty Peel in 8th, Santi Ortiz in 9th, Spaceboy rounds out the top 10. We await the finish of Scott Taylor and Nick Flies to round off proceedings, but simply sensational from Speedkey. As you said, Jake, right place, right time, and a fully deserved win at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Yeah, he'll be really pleased with that result, and I have no doubt that he is kicking on now more and more, and he'll have a massive smile that he's put this victory together and he's got what he wanted. But you look around at the championship drivers, and there will be a lot of talking that will be done after this race. There will be a lot of work that needs to be undertaken by the stewarding team, and this is one which I think the result here from Brazil, which you see here on your screen that will be coming up in the next few moments, I don't think it's going to stay like that by the time the end of racing is done, by the time we reach next week here, Karl. I think that there is a lot to discuss, and this might be one of the most contentious races of the season so far.
Plenty of race rundown to come once the podium is done and they're spraying nothing. You have to wonder if there's a degree of insanity in the F05 ESPORTS podium and rostrum, but they drink sweet nothings, but really they have reaped the rewards of an absolutely rapturous race around Interlagos. Speedkey your race winner, Havoc Gamer and Much complete the podium. APOX KOEN championship leader, in the end, damage limitation, but in a sense, it was also what could have been. Petronas, 3 thousandths off, but in P5 nonetheless. Bantam 6, Sniper Z in 7th, Matty Peel 8th, Santi Ortiz in 9th with Spaceboy in 10th, and the rest of the order is yours to survey as we scroll down. The only non-finishers, Mr. Dale, clipped by Ollie, and Duke Seeker, our pole sitter, were unable to finish this race. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, what even is there to say? Like, where do you start, Jake? Where do you start with a race like that? Brazil doesn't disappoint. It never misses.
I think the fact that I start with is that the drivers who started 14th, 15th, and 16th in today's race finished 1, 2, and 3 on the podium. I think that's the biggest port of call that needs to be addressed, because this was always going to be one of those races where a little bit of something could crop up that could make the difference. Two safety cars, rain to dry. Pretty much it's a case of everyone had to be on the right strategy at the right time. Those at the back made the call early enough to give themselves the track position. And from there, those who are at the front, I think, left it a little bit too late out there. They didn't give themselves the opportunity, and also just weren't quite as prepared for how much battling they had to do over the course of this race.
I mean, it was the tale of the safety cars as well. I mean, we can talk about the safety cars for ages. The crashes at the pit exit, the contentious overtake on the pit exit, cheeky but cunning from the championship leader, that's up for debate. But in a way, it sort of provided that psychological reset for a lot of drivers, including the likes of Petronas, Santi Ortiz and whatnot. Even if you were seemingly down and out in the early stages, you could build back up again. And that's exactly what they did. And then for others, it sort of crippled their momentum. Whether it was staying out on the older tyres, playing a blinder, or trying to play a blinder, a gamble that just didn't work. There was all sorts of dynamics going on with every single stanza.
Yeah, and this is the sort of race where you couldn't really stay too still. There was always something going on. There was always going to be a little bit of drama here and there. But I think the most important thing to remember is that your championship leader said that he doesn't like this circuit coming into play. And I think that was quite telling in the way that he drove. It was very defensive. It was very much a case of the aggressive factor was turned up to try and compensate for the way that he normally drives. And the reality of the racing that we've seen is that he got himself involved in a few too many incidents that were unbefitting of a championship leader. Championship leaders normally stay out of trouble. It's known that you make your own luck when it comes to a racing championship. And my word, did APOX KOEN use all of it here today at Interlagos.
It fell into the palm of his hand in simply superb fashion at the end of the day. A P4 on the road for the championship leader when all was said and done. It couldn't have played out much better despite everything that happened. We have to talk about Speed Key. What a race from Speed Key. We'll say it time and time again. He came so close at the US Grand Prix had it not been for that 3-second time penalty. But put it all together today, and boy did it pay off.
Yeah, it really did. And, you know, you're sitting back and you're going, when is my time going to come? If you continue to do the right things in practice, get the right results over together on the board, by the end of it, you are going to get the results that you've been asking for again and again and again. You know, you're going to find those victories sooner or later if the pace is there and, you know, the stars align for you. You've got to be right place, right time. That's what we saw, and that's why he's found the result he's needed to, and that's why he's won here today at Interlagos.
I also will say, we were going to say track limit penalties would play a part today. No more so than for Mr. Bantams, okay? It almost allowed Petronas. Had it had been 3 thousandths in it, that would be heart-wrenching for him. But for Bantams, I mean, the ultimate gain was P12 at the end of that race, but just by keeping it clean, just by keeping it on the black stuff, up to P6 at the end of that race. Just by keeping it cool and composed, and that's just marks the importance of it, doesn't it? When the racing is that close and everyone is fighting tooth and nail, it's keeping those crucial errors at a minimum that will ultimately pay dividends.
This was a fight in a phone booth, essentially, is what we had here today. There was no room to breathe at any given point, and everyone was going to be sitting down and saying, right, you've got to stay pretty much in your lane. If you keep it out of trouble today, you're just going to pay dividends as you go through. You can't afford to pick up those penalties. And that's the thing that we're seeing at the moment here with F1 style esports that we're seeing out there, especially here in F05. Keep the penalties away and the positions will pay. And that's how you gain these championships, by making sure you're driving as clean as possible without too much drama.
Well, we have an interview, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk to the man who finished in P5 in today's Brazilian Grand Prix. Mr. SLR Petronas, congratulations, my friend. I mean, where do we start with a race weekend like that? I mean, qualifying was an absolute fairy tale, and then the race was a roller coaster ride, I have no doubt. So close to P5, I'm sure the emotions are all over the place, to put it one way. How was that for you out there today?
I mean, qualifying was basically a one-shot qualifying. we literally, as I started my flying lap, the rain started. The race was going well. Dale had great pace in the wet. Just very unlucky for the safety car for him. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a good race. Going in the pits, I had a bit of altercation with Cohen. Is it? I don't know. I was slowing down for the pits. He hit the side of me and pushed me over the speed limit, and I got a 10-second time penalty. And then coming out of the pits, he decided to just overtake me on the pit in the pit lane exit. So I mean, he says I thought he thought I was letting him by, but I mean, why would I let him by?
I mean, Jake did make his feelings pretty clear on broadcast about what he thought about the particular pit lane incident.
It was yeah. I mean, I have some words on it, but I'll keep them to myself. All I'm gonna say is he's lucky it didn't clip my video, else I'll be sending that in because I don't think that's quite on.
And
But
with
no,
that, no, carry on, sorry.
overall it was a very good race. I finished fourth, around some very fast people, so I'm happy.
Excellent. With that act of diplomacy, Jake, over to you for a question.
Well, this has been a tough race. You had your ups, your downs through it, but just talk us through the process of getting ready for a wet race like this. You sit down and you got all this qualifying that goes completely out the books. All these drivers don't have as much time to get settled into the race. Do you feel that with the way that the drivers raced around you today, that maybe that one-shot style of qualifying really aided to the way that the race went, in the sense that we saw a lot more incidents than we're used to?
Yes, I completely agree. I think a lot of people were out of position, should I say, and they were in a hurry to get past. But I mean, getting ready for a wet race, that's why I went out and did some laps on the inters in qualifying because I knew it was going to be an inter start at least. To be quite honest, I thought it was going to be a full wet race from the broadcast, what it said. But yeah, I just think sometimes people need to just chill. They've got the pace, they'll be able to do the overtakes. No need to force it.
Of course, of course. Just talk about, I mean, particularly, like I said, it was a roller coaster. Let's put it that way. I mean, but particularly that last stint, how good is that satisfaction? I mean, you came from basically the back of the grid all the way up to the top 5 come the end, despite everything that happened. How good is that for you personally on a confidence perspective, knowing that really the pace was always there? There was absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's a confidence booster. I mean, the 10 seconds, it was a kind of blessing in disguise, really, because I mean, I knew the mediums on the last couple of laps were going to be dying off, and I was going to be on the medium set. So I would have been in their situation. So me getting the 10-second time penalty and going on to the hards allowed me to have good rubber at the end of the race. So it was always a kind of a waiting game for their tyres to start dying off and mine to become the favourite tyres, which you saw. I kind of cut through. I mean, some instance and some contact was made through people, which made it a bit easier. But overall, I think I had the pace on them because of their tyres dying. Going through the middle sector, I was catching Cohen 3-4 attempts, and then he would pull the gap again on the straights, which is why it finished so close. But yeah, I mean, it was a good race. A lot of confidence built from that race. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I guess I've got one more question then, and that is that, you come into today, second through sixth is split by 18 points. F1 Scott has a bad day. Snipersy has a bad day. Marvsky's not here and much. Ultimately comes away with a top 3 finish. Do you see this as a win today around your relative rivals in the championship and your quest for, if not the championship in itself, but a top 3 finish?
Oh, definitely. It's definitely a win when it comes to the championship table. I mean, I'm not going to be winning it, that's for sure. I think Cohen's got that. But no, definitely it's a win for me today.
Brilliant. And one final thing from me. Next round, where we're heading? The entertainment capital, Mr. Las Vegas. What are your thoughts on Las Vegas, and how prepared do you feel going round there when we head there next week?
I'm not a fan, to be quite honest. Setups around that track are very weird. There's so many different setups you can run, depending on where you want advantage and where you want disadvantage. The grip levels around that track are just weird. I mean, it's just crazy. But I'll take it race by race. It's another race on the calendar, so I'll try and do my best. But it's one of those tracks that I don't feel very confident.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. But nonetheless, that's in the future. In the present, at the moment, well done today. A great fairy tale front row start in qualifying, and then an absolutely rampant recovery, particularly in the last phase of the race. Well done to Mr. SLR Petronas today. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
Thank you for streaming.
You're very welcome. Have a good rest of your day, mate. Take care.
Thank you.
Lovely jubbly. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The only one that wanted to join us today and jump on and give his thoughts and feelings on Brazil. Big thank you to Mr. SLR Petronas for coming on and doing just that. Las Vegas next week, though. I mean, Brazil in itself was an absolute slobber knocker all the way through. And if that was the case, then you can only imagine just how mad Las Vegas is going to be. The entertainment capital, F05, it's not going to disappoint, is it?
Well, when you take F05 eSports to Sin City, I think that you're going to get an understanding of a race which is very different to the one that we've had today. Overtaking is pretty much a formality when you head to Las Vegas and you drive down the strip, one of the longest straight sections of racing out there in the Formula One calendar. It's a track that is built to be glitz, it's built to be glamour, it's built to be high speed, and I'm sure we're going to see all of that in abundance. I'm sure that next week is going to be an absolutely sensational race, and the only place you can catch that is with us and the F05 eSports crew. So you really want to jump back on and see us again in 7 days.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't place your bets too early. Hold your cards close to your chest, because it's the highest aces who are going to fly the best at Las Vegas next week. But for now, what a beautiful Brazilian Grand Prix week on F05 eSports Division 2 it has been. But Mr. Jake Sperry, firstly, what a pleasure it's been commentating alongside you. It's been an absolute honour, my friend. Where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on X at Jake_Sperry, I believe it is. And you can also find me out on Blue Sky at Jake, Jake, I don't even know which one it is. I couldn't use an underscore. I used the smaller version of an underscore that's not an underscore, .bsky.social.
Lovely stuff. There you go. Go and follow him now if you haven't already. He's an absolute legend, and he's been an absolute pleasure to co-commentate alongside with tonight. As for me, I'll tell you where you can't find me. You won't find me in Helsinki. I'm definitely not there. But where you will find me is, I have a very distinctive name. If you type it as one word, you'll probably find me there. My Instagram handle is also down there at the bottom right. Go and follow it there. But it's time for the sun to set and the door to close on what has ultimately been an absolutely superb week for Mr. Speedkey. Any closing thoughts from yourself, Jake, for tonight?
Bring on Las Vegas. I think that, we sit at a very important crossroads in the season where points are really important to come by. I know that SLR Petronas doesn't have his view of the incident that he's had, but I would implore the stewarding team to take what we saw on the broadcast and take Koen's perspective of that and really give that another look, because that is a championship defining moment in terms of this championship, and it doesn't deserve to be brushed under the rug for one driver not to have a view of an incident like that that's happened. This was a race of damage limitation for almost everybody at some stage or form over the course of this race, which made it really unique in terms of its prospects. And it really goes to show you that when you're reaching the latter stage of a championship, all these drivers here in Division 2, their nerves are starting to fray. And that means that we're getting the most unpredictable racing of the season. And it means any result is truly possible.
Anything can happen in Formula One, and it usually does, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes what has been an absolutely wonderful Brazilian Grand Prix week here on F05 eSports Division 2. And so begins the thank yous. A big thank you firstly to all of you for tuning in and watching another week of Division 2. Consider hitting that follow button if you haven't already. as we head to Las Vegas, the entertainment capital, next week. A big thank you to Mr. F1 Alex for having both myself and Jake on. A shout out to Tuatara Sim Racing Wear. Go and check them out if you haven't already. Well done to all the drivers out there today for putting on a scintillating spectacle. Join, hopefully, the pair of us once again for next week at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. But until then, a huge thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And until then, it's goodbye.